Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining me tonight on another episode of Spanning the Need. I'm your host, Anthony Spano. Today, we're going to change course again. Last night, we were at legal. Tonight, we're in politics and what happens in them. Tonight, we're going to be talking with Realtor and candidate for Trumbull County Commissioner, Niki Frenchko, if I said that correctly. Frenchko, I apologize. We're going to talk about life, politics, and everything else around it. Niki, thank you for joining me. Hope you're well right now.
Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. We talk about a lot of different stuff, and right now, politics is one of those things that comes to mind when we talk about politics. It's like, well, what about politics? But we're going to get into that later. Why don't you tell the audience a little bit about yourself and kind of how you got where you are now, becoming a realtor and now becoming a candidate for Trumbull County Commissioner?
Well, I'll tell you about my background. I started, I'll go back a ways further. I grew up on the north end of Warren, kind of a challenging and not so desirable upbringing. But I got through it, a lot of obstacles along the way. I was emancipated when I was 16. I joined the Army and went to basic training when I was 17. And the reserves, I served 8 years.
Thank you for serving, by the way.
Thank you. So I did that, and then I came back and went to school for social work. I wanted to help people. Become a licensed social worker, and I worked for several years with Birdman Group and in mental health, working with people who were mentally ill and substance abusing. And then I also worked for Scope and information and referral and working with seniors and families there for a little bit. And then from there, I went to get my master's degree in public administration. I graduated with honors and got into a master's program on a scholarship. And I loved it. When I was actually in undergraduate school, that was my favorite course, was public administration. I figured you could impact the lives of more people positively by working in public administration. So it went right along with social work in my eyes to get into public administration. So from there, I was doing, I did a couple years at the Trumbull County Planning Commission, and my thesis was a study in revitalization. I looked a lot into what needed to happen policy-wise at the local, state, and federal level in order to bring about revitalization and redevelopment in our cities. And my cat's coming to visit. So
hey, I was welcome, a new audience member.
So I was at the Trumbull County Planning Commission for a couple years, and then from there I was laid off and went to work for CT Consultants, where I did their community development planning, housing strategies, community development block grants, and other types of things, and I absolutely loved it. I got my real estate license in between starting for CT and leaving the Planning Commission. I spent, I think I want to say about 6 years there at CT Consultants, and I worked for not just one government, but I was doing plans that were this thick and getting them approved by ODOD for 9 different communities, from Jefferson County, Medina. I had some communities in Trumbull County was a client of mine, and the city of Niles, Girard, Struthers, Campbell, Mahoning County, Wadsworth. I had a lot of different experience outside of just working for government in the consulting capacity. You know, we were hired to do the consulting for a lot of their projects. After that, I ended up working for myself as a realtor, and I started investing whenever the real estate market crashed, is whenever I decided to start a small business for myself. As a single mom, I thought that was a wise thing for me to do. It enabled me to spend time with my family and teach them work ethic. And we started our own business and began investing in real estate. And at the same time, I was selling. So I started off selling to investors, and I was like, hey, we should be doing this too. So it was a great time to get into that. And Subsequent to that, I also got my HUD 203K consulting license. I went to appraisal school. So I do inspections for HUD projects for development. And what brought me to where I am today, to where I wanted to get back into politics, was my service on the Senior Services Advisory Council. I was appointed 3 years ago to serve on that council, which oversees the administration and spending of our senior levy dollars in Trumbull County.
And who appoints those?
The commissioners.
Okay.
My opponent appointed me.
So it kind of comes back twofold when we talk about, so you're giving your service back to the community on that advisory, and you're also a realtor, and you're kind of investing properties at the same time. So then you kind of just stayed into that through these years as being basically investing properties, flipping them type mentality, if I'm correct, and then basically staying in that line of work. Is that pretty much correct? And you kind of got out of the consultant business?
Well, when I was in the consulting business, I was actually working in community development, and the plans that I did were housing improvement strategies. So I find that even though every once in a while here and there, I would write a parks grant application or work in some economic development projects, I was always at the same time working in housing and community development in some respect, and working with people. And I deal with rental properties in our business. And so I feel like I've always been working to make sure that our community has decent housing that's safe and affordable. And I think that it's important to look at, as a candidate, when you're looking at someone who's looking to fill an office, I think it's important to consider someone who has worked in the private sector, who has worked in government, who has worked being self-employed. And I have such a diverse background. I still maintain my social work license and study. Lately, I've been working more looking into things that affect senior citizens and the aging population, because that's where my focus has been on the Senior Levy Council. Also, we have problems with opioids and drug addiction and things like that. So I've done a lot of those studies as well. So I maintain these licensures. It's not just I was a licensed social worker. I still am, and I still have to go to training, and I maintain that. And that's something that you take with you throughout life when you study something like that.
Social workers are probably one of the hardest working people. And the reason why I say that is I was on the Children's Services Board for Mahoning County for about 8 years. So I'm aware of what our social workers do, what they go through. They're just doing their job. They're low paying jobs, but they love what they do and they want to help out. That's what I interpret from being on the board and hearing some of the horrific things in the past. So I commend you for that. And I think I want to take a step back. You talk about being an overall candidate. You have all these things. Why in the heck would you want to be in public office right now? I had Judge Russo on, and we talked about, like, with everything going on between, you see all these presidents saying this about someone, or dealing with the headaches. Why do you want to be commissioner?
So while I was serving on the Senior Services Advisory Council, my opponent appointed me and then wanted to put his thumb on me and wanted me to carry out an agenda, make sure my buddy gets paid. That person who was his buddy wanted to give me a donation to my daughter's field trip, and I didn't realize who he was, and we did business with them. And I was like, okay, there's something about this just doesn't feel right. I couldn't take any donations from someone who we did business with. I sent it back and I said, that's unethical. And then I realized the reason why this person wasn't getting paid is because he was being audited for not really performing the services, after which I contacted the FTA, the Inspector General, demanded that we got an Attorney General opinion because they were lying on a federal grant application and misappropriating senior levy funds violating tax levy law. So because of my background and that experience that I have, me being on that council, they were just obvious red flags to me that these things were being done wrong. And then I saw people who were falsifying billing invoices and still getting paid. And I realized that as a person who has this background that I have, and I'll talk a little bit about the degree and the education I have. It's a master's degree in public administration. So if we were a community that had a charter, or if we were a community that hired a county administrator, that would be the required degree for city management, even for federal administrative jobs. That's the required background. So here I am with my experience and my background, sitting on this volunteer board. My kids are growing up, they're in college, graduating from college, and I'm thinking, okay, this is time for me to move forward and do what I know how to do. I've tried to work for the county before. I wanted to get a job in the economic development, actually the planning commission, when the economic development person retired, and I was told that they already had a guy picked out for the job. Some kid picked out was the word that he used. And so I'm not the only person who is getting the shaft when it comes to applying for employment when they're qualified and overqualified. You know, this is something that just goes on, and it's a problem. The nepotism and the cronyism and the lack of transparency from what I've seen on that council and what I've experienced being an outsider. And then as I'm campaigning, I'm meeting more and more people who say, you know, they give me horror stories about how they've applied for work, or when I was working in a department, I should have been the person who was promoted, but instead they reduced the job requirements, eliminated the requirement for a degree in order for my opponent to bring in his friend. And these are the things that give our valley a negative reputation, is the quid pro quo and the lack of professionalism. And these are the things that I studied. So I think this is a time in my life where I should be using my skill set to benefit the community. It's kind of like an extension of social work. And it's an extension of my service on the board or on the council. I just want to do so much good and start putting people over politics. Every decision that we see being made, there's usually, when it comes to my opponent, there's some hidden agenda, or decisions are made based on their relationship with a certain political person. And that's not how it should be done. Every decision, whether it's hiring, promotions, awarding bids, planning sewers and infrastructure, they should all be based on what's in the best interest of the public, not your relationship with me or someone on the commissioner's board. So
those are some heavy suggestions that you're making about the Trumbull County, and I would say that you also, and I'm going to quote you here, that you think it's a good old boys club.
Yeah.
Explain a little bit about that.
I mean, there are specific, I just gave a couple examples. One of them related to the contract that was given for over 12 years. We had a contract where they were using senior levy funds I'll explain the scheme that was perpetrated on all of us here in Trumbull County. They were taking senior levy funds. They were sending them over via a memorandum of understanding to the transit board to use senior levy funds for all citizens when they're only allowed to be used for the object of the levy. And that was the violation of the levy law. So they were putting that in their federal grant application, misrepresenting those funds, applying for federal match money to bring in millions of dollars for a contractor to make millions of dollars over the course of 10, 12 years, I think it was, and provide an on-demand transportation service, meaning you call in and you get a ride. Now, here's where the gag was. You would call in and you were told you can't get a ride. You were told you had to call back next week. Now, if you're a senior citizen and you have a doctor's appointment, or you're any person in the community and you need transportation and you call a number of times and you're told you can't get the ride, you quit calling. So the name of their game was provide less services and you're still getting this much money. Provide more services, you're still getting this much money. So to provide fewer services, their income margin or their profit margin was higher. And that's what they were doing. And I discovered that. And right now we're sitting in a position where that individual, who was one of the good old boys, was one of the people who was behind the efforts to get me taken off the ballot. Everything, I don't think people realize it unless they're in it, how entrenched this is. With the bidding.
Well, and I think you have, when you talk about that, I think when people may not know this, but a little before you mentioned that you were appointed by all three commissioners. Mm-hmm. Okay. And you were actually endorsed by one.
Yeah.
So you were actually endorsed by Frank Fudo, who is a longtime county commissioner.
Yeah. So
basically, and I quote, "Niki has my full support for a commissioner." Explain what that endorsement meant to you.
It meant a lot to me because I think it shows that party doesn't matter. When you have someone who's on the opposite ticket who says, I want to work with this person, and him and I don't agree about everything. But he knows, even the other commissioner, they both know that no matter what, I'm going to be coming from a place of the public's best interest. There's not going to be a hidden agenda to benefit a friend or a family member or due to some deal that was made without their knowledge. So that it means a lot to me because I think that locally people are starting to realize that it's the people, it's not just the party. And what meant even more than that endorsement to me was the endorsement of the Youngstown Warren Black Caucus. Because I was the first Republican in the history of their organization to be endorsed in Trumbull County. And that's because they recognize that the hiring policies and implementing a civil service commission and having a rubric so that applicants are ranked fairly and they're promoted. I've talked to people who work at the county. One happens to be a minority. He has applied for other jobs in the county, and he said he feels the glass ceiling, and that shouldn't be. If someone is knowledgeable in their job and they've got so much time in and they're educated, they should have an opportunity to advance to managerial positions because of their qualifications, not what they're doing now, which is reducing at times, like they did at the Geauga Solid Waste District, reducing the criteria in order to get a friend a job. And then that friend pushes other people out so that they could advance another individual, a commissioner's agenda. This is the good old boys. This is what I'm talking about. And it happens on both parties. It happens.
Right. And I know you actually ran back in 2006 as a commissioner.
Yes.
What's the difference in that campaign and this campaign? What are the very big differences that you see from running your campaigns?
Well, in 2006, it was very ideological for me. I saw that as an opportunity for me to use the things that I just learned out of my graduate school. I saw some really bad things happening when I was at the Trumbull County Planning Commission. I saw some things administratively, that I wanted to improve. And I thought, okay, I can do this better. These things are fresh in my head. I know how to do X, Y, and Z. We can implement zero-based budgeting. They're asking me how to do joint economic development districts and CEDAs for economic development. It's because the county employees don't know, but I know these things, so I want to do them. It was very academic. And this time when I'm running, 15 years later, it's not as academic. It's more me having participated in the process of government and seeing firsthand the layers of of corruption and the ineptitude and knowing that people are suffering. I am talking to people, reaching out to me, employees of Trumbull County who are suffering because they have poor management. They're not treated well. I mean, I could talk to you about our 911 center and how terrible this mismanagement is there. These are employees who are responsible for our safety, and they're working mandatory overtime. Overtime actually exhausts our budget more quickly. Also, they're understaffed. There are terrible problems with the management there, and that's the one thing. We don't have any process of management feedback or managerial evaluations in the county. It seems like management positions are almost treated as political appointees, and they never get evaluated, and it's just a lifetime career in government. And so what I also want to implement is some management feedback and evaluations, because they are appointees practically, and they need. Go ahead. You were going to ask me something.
Well, and I think that rolls into my next question is, if you're elected, what are kind of your top issues that you plan on doing? We'll say in a 5-year period. Well, we'll say 4 years, because that's a term of a county commissioner. So what do you plan on looking at over those 4 years, or your goals working with the commissioners that are there?
The very first thing is the hiring, the human resources issues, and the culture of the county. We spend so much money. When I talk about the culture, people think culture as in color, race, ethnicity. No, when I say culture, I'm thinking a culture of corruption, a culture of hostile work environment, a culture of disrespect, and a culture of an organization can only be changed from the top down. And we have at the top who, if they believe it's appropriate to threaten people's jobs, as I have seen him do at public meetings, to bully and intimidate staff to go along with his agenda, even though it's not in the best interest of the county and our citizens, then others in the county think that that's acceptable. And they keep on bringing in more people that believe that it's okay to treat people that way. And it's terrible. I have been at commissioners' meetings and heard them calling in where people's jobs are threatened. I was intimidated by my opponent. He tried to, yell at me at a commissioner's meeting. If you don't go along with the agenda, then, he threatens you. What I want to do is unclip their wings of staff and let them do what's right for the people. Let them do what's right for the community. Hopefully, if we have people who are qualified in these positions, and they're going to make decisions and they're told, you make decisions on the best interest of the people, based on your education and your skill set and your knowledge. And let's talk about this, as opposed to, I need you to do this, this, and this for me. That's what I mean about changing the culture. So a lot of those things are related to human resources. And the first thing I want to do is implement a civil service commission or something similar, like a civil or a citizen oversight panel on the hiring. If we do that,
I think the city of Youngstown has a civil service commission in their area. And I actually want to kind of give you an example. There was back in probably about 2 or 3 years ago, there was a girl by the name of Rebecca Gerson. She became the purchasing coordinator / administrator. She then left, and then they gave the the purchasing to their HR director, and then they don't know if they applied to if they actually ever filled the administrative role for the county. Is that about the summation of it?
When she was brought in with a political agenda as well. She was brought in to be the transit administrator, had never worked in transportation, had never worked in grant planning or management, dropped the ball on that and left the county in trouble, because what did they do? My opponent was put the driving force behind that. They wanted to bring in someone who was going to carry out an agenda. And nothing got done during that time because she wasn't an administrator, she was an attorney. And God bless attorneys. My significant other, he's an attorney and he's brilliant, but there's a difference in skill set for being an administrator and being an attorney. And, that was a fiasco. That was
Well, and I know, but I think from what I read in the papers that it was just that everything was just, I don't know if it was what was going on. It just looked like there was, I'm not exactly sure how to phrase it because it just didn't look there. Does that make sense?
It what?
It just didn't look right.
It wasn't right because it was an agenda. Anytime that there's an agenda that is personal anytime there's a personal agenda placed above the best interest of the people, it's not going to look right. Everyone knows what happens in Trumbull County government doesn't look right. And those are the things that I want to change. We want to have a civil service commission. I do. I want to have an anti-nepotism policy. I want to make sure that when people are hired or they apply for a promotion, that there's a piece of paper, a rubric filled out that shows where they were and that only the top tier is interviewed. And if someone doesn't get the job, they're going to get a courtesy call back and they're going to be able to find out where they placed in the ranking and why they weren't considered. We need to do things upright and open and fairly in hiring and in promoting. Also in a bit awarding contracts. You talked about the good old boys way of doing things. It's not this person does for me and gives to my campaigns. It's who is the lowest and best bidder, who's got a good reputation. Are we going to start helping some DBEs and some new businesses have an opportunity to work for the county? One of the things that really is, I cannot believe that it is 2020. I've got an opponent who's been in office for 37 years, and we still don't have an comprehensive countywide economic development plan. Where is that? Why do we keep on returning someone who learns from looking around them, who's never had a job, who's never really worked, who thinks that showing up and signing papers once a week is the job? Because it's not. It's upsetting. And then you see them out there trying to take credit for work that was done by the Regional Chamber of Commerce or by Commissioner Fuda, who actually went to Washington, D.C. and Columbus to work on some of these sewer projects. And here my opponent's taking credit for the work that he did nothing but sign the paper on.
Well, and I think you have a lot of challenges, I should say. So let me ask you this. What do you consider is the greatest challenge in general as a commissioner? And if you're elected, how do you address it?
The greatest challenge
as a commissioner.
If
elected, how do you plan to address it?
When I think about the greatest challenge, I think that our reputation is so poor, and I think that that's going to be a great challenge, is to implement the things that I want to do. I think I have the support of Mauro Cantalamessa and Frank Fuda. I've worked well with them in the past. In fact, I needed them to turn the corner with the transportation issues. And I think that working together, we will be able to make some changes, but we just really need to change the reputation of Trumbull County and show that we do business the right way. That's going to be a challenge. To overcome a negative reputation, I think, is going to take some time. And we do that by professionalism and by including the public and by doing things like we are here online. I'd love to see some commissioner meetings videoed so that people feel connected. We have to improve the trust and the transparency. And there are things that we can do to repair the relationships that we have between government and the citizens.
Do you have any I know we've talked a little bit about, we've kind of been all over saying about hiring practices, culture, the senior levy. Any particular projects that you feel should be a big asset if you're elected?
Particular projects. Well, I'd like to. One thing that I do want to do is make sure that we hire a full-time grants coordinator, because we do not have a grants writer in Trumbull County. So we don't have an economic development plan. We don't have a grants writer. And grants writer positions, they pay for themselves. I was just talking today to someone who works at the sheriff's department, and they were talking about some grants that other police departments and fire departments have received, but they don't have any. They're not receiving any funds. And we have a planning commission director who left the grants writing position. And since she left, we really don't have a full-time person dedicated to doing that. And when we have that, I believe that that's going to open the doors to other projects and other things that we can be doing. Particularly, I want to see more economic development jobs. And I think once we get WRTA here in Trumbull County, that's going to help us as well. And I've been working on that, not even as a commissioner. I've had people who thought that I was a full-time employee of the county just because I was always at meetings and I was writing testimony for the state. And my commitment to the community has been evidence and the things that I've been doing already. But so when we have our transportation in place, we're going to be able to market better. Another issue. Well, I know you asked me a specific question, but it makes me think about the economic development and our lack of it without a strategy and a plan. And I think that that's incredibly important. I mean, we're completely rudderless. We don't have anything except for people just talking about Lordstown, and they're having problems right now negotiating to deal with the battery plant because of the infrastructure issues and not being able to figure out how to extend that sewer line there. And one of the problems with that is, again, a good old boys thing going on right now. We've got my opponent trying to work with the mayor there in order to garner support to do a project in a fashion that's not advantageous to the rest of the county, just to benefit one individual so he can get votes there. So it's just so much of that kind of thing that we just need to wipe our slates clear of all that political garbage and start doing things in the best interest of everyone in the county. I know one of the big issues right now is the annexation, and I was wondering if you were going to ask me that.
Yeah, that's one of my questions, and actually I might as well we'll ask it now. Okay, if you're elected as commissioner, what would you do about the Howland-Niles annexation issue?
Well, first of all, even not being elected, we have to stand up and we have to fight against it. And we have to, one of the things that hasn't happened ever, I don't think, is a forethought in planning for infrastructure. And one of the reasons why there's an effort to land grab and and do the annexation for profit, which I oppose, is because of poor financial and poor infrastructure planning for maintenance. Oftentimes, people get into elected office and so you don't have to have any qualifications except for winning the popular vote to get the position. And there might not be that background in future maintenance planning and projecting. And those are some things that I would like to do to prevent those situations from happening in the future, is that you always consider the future impact on the budget and infrastructure and staffing and things like that. And that's something that's ignored. But I'm absolutely opposed to it. And I can say that, and I mean that. It's compulsory annexation is something that we should be working with the state legislature to change. This is really going to adversely affect people who live in Howland. it shouldn't happen. It's going to affect their property values. Having a real estate background and appraisal background is going to affect their property values. It's going to affect their insurance rates. People and industries situate themselves in townships for certain advantages, such as tax advantages, not to have to pay income taxes, and then they're not getting what they wanted, why they originally located there, and then it's a slippery slope as well because you keep on moving on and on and on. So another thing that I would like to do to prevent that, aside from working with the municipalities to make sure that they have better planning and forethought on infrastructure down the road, is making sure that our townships have options for utilities. Okay, because that's one of the problems, that they don't have any options. So they've got them in a bad position. They're between a rock and a hard place. We're gonna have to be robbed for, even look in Liberty. They're not facing annexation issues, but their water rates are astronomical, and they shouldn't be robbed and price gouged because they're customers of a certain water district. I think we need to be looking at regionalizing the water and sewer districts as much as possible. And over in Pennsylvania, they do that. We should be doing that here in this county. It's the rates for outside rates are ridiculous.
You know how hard you know this as much as I do, how hard change is.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, how would you show that to the community? Like, hey, I know you don't like change, but this is why we're going to do it. How would you show that? How would you show the public that this change is good on any issue that you can think of?
Well, for the annexation, I think everyone knows it's not fair. Everyone knows it's statutorily okay by the Ohio Revised Code, but it's just not fair. People don't support it by and large, and they know that financial mismanagement by our government is what caused it, and lack of development. There should be other taxes and other bases coming in so that we're not robbing utility users. I know that these communities are asking for change. Howland Township is asking for change. Liberty is asking for change. Weathersfield, they don't want to be annexed. Yeah, I mean, I'm a gun person, and I've gone and shot at the gun range there in Weathersfield. And if they were to annex, they would have to shut down their operation there because you can't discharge firearms within the city limits. And that's a fantastic club. I've been there. I've been to speak at their meetings. I've gone there and shot with my children, and they do a lot for the community, and they do firearms training for women and veterans. They do great things there. And I don't know. I think that the community is ready for change. And that's what I'm hearing more of. I spoke to someone today who said that you can't expect to have anything better and continue to return the same people into office. Status quo sometimes resists change. I get that. But by and large, I believe that the people of Trumbull County are tired of it, especially the hiring practices. So that's one thing that doesn't matter who you are. We know that most communities have an anti-nepotism policy. Most communities have a civil service commission. We do not. People are craving fair government. And to the extent people are finally realizing how unfair our government is, they're ready for change. I don't think that there's anyone who's going to oppose some of these things that I'm talking about unless they're, on the receiving end of a favor,
Well, and I think you may be on the right track. We would have to see how the community, Trumbull County community, responds to that. I mean, you've been probably to all four corners of the county. What's the biggest issue that you've been hearing about? Has it been the way the county runs? using money? What's the biggest issue that you've seen from hearing from people all over the county?
A lot of it is just being unfair. The things that everyone has been touched by it. It's gotten to the point where everyone has been touched by it. Everyone knows someone or is someone who has been on who has received the short end of the stick because they're not connected to the right person. Whether it's for a project that should have been planned and wasn't, or, someone getting forced out of their job or not considered, or sitting in a situation where they're being treated poorly in their office working for the county because, someone got a favor. I think that's a bigger issue than people realize, because it causes then inefficiencies, and it drains us financially. When you have someone who is not qualified to do a job and they're in a position, then the quality of service is going to go down. It's going to affect service delivery. The cost is going to go up because they might have to hire some assistants, or it might take them 10 times longer to figure it out because they don't know what they're doing. I think that's big. That's been really big. The annexation issue and the utilities. We're not just, Niles, Girard, Warren, Hubbard. We're not just big cities. We have township areas as well. And oftentimes, the townships, Boyd Champion and Lordstown got a very terrible deal with their utility rates. And that's been something that I've been hearing as a problem. Septic issues. People are struggling with the septic issues, and jobs and services for senior citizens. That's another thing, is the transportation. That's why I was really active with that. Saving money. That's another thing. People want to know that their commissioners are regarding county funds as if it's their own. That they're not just spending it like, it's just tax money. Doesn't matter. Let's spend it. They want to know that someone is a guardian of their resources. And I've heard a lot about people being frustrated by that spending or creating a job. Oh, they cringe every time they hear, like my opponent created a job for someone to go out and ding people for not pulling permits. Just his job is to drive around and look for people doing work. It's
I don't know how to explain that one.
It's real. It's true. There are so many things that people don't realize that are happening here in Trumbull County, but it's just, we need to actually do things in the best interest of our citizens and our constituents instead of the best interest of your personal agenda. I give this person a job, their whole family votes for me. They're going to give me a percentage of their paycheck when I run for office next time. I don't like that. No one likes that.
I would not like that. I mean, yeah, this was there was something in the Tribune Chronicle the other day. I'm going to quote this individual. This was a letter to the editor, basically saying, I'm paraphrasing out of the article. We have a chance to support a true gateway candidate in Niki. She has proven her right to be on the ballot, and she has kept her campaign focused on the issues and plans that are important to Trumbull County. I am voting for her, and I'm asking everyone in Trumbull County who wants to change for the better.
That's nice.
What's your response to a quote like that was put in the Tribune as a letter to the editor?
My response is people are that my message is resonating with people. And earlier you mentioned that people sometimes resist change. And this is an example of people who are paying closer attention and they're ready for it. They don't want to see what's been going on for decades continue. Right now in Trumbull County, we have our population is the lowest it's been since the 1950s. And it's happened during my opponent's tenure as an elected official. The last 37 years is when we've dropped down to our lowest rate. We need change. We can't just keep on doing things this way and thinking that it's helping us. It's just sad. And then whenever I did work on this transportation, we've got fixed route transportation coming to Trumbull County. I talked to some people who were immigrants, business owners and immigrants. They were excited for it. Now they can finally have their family members move here because where they live, they in other countries and in other big cities, they have public transportation. So that's something that can also help stabilize our population. It's time for change. It's time to look at our county as a whole. Also in regard to the economic development, I know that a lot of people are focused on new development, a new green space, and my focus is on revitalizing some spaces that already are existing that could be marketed, and having an inventory and dealing with site selection firms specifically, and then developing industry that's complementary to what we already have here in the county, which includes agriculture. Northern Trumbull County, we've got so much agriculture, and we don't have all of the infrastructure and supportive industry needed to help them to be successful as well. So, I just want to look at the county as a whole and bring the townships and the cities and everyone together. It's that whole social worker in me that just wants to bring everything together and get people working together and advancing the county in a way that benefits all of us.
Okay. Well, I have a couple Q&A if you mind. We already covered one of them, which was the annexation of Howland, Weathersfield, and Mineral Ridge. This one comes from Rich, and his question is to this point in life, what is your best career moment that you've had?
The best career moment. Okay. Well, I would assume that's more best memory that you had. That's like your high point. Yeah, there were. I have to give two things.
Okay.
One of them. Well, I loved working in community development, and whenever I had a challenge before me, I thought it was exciting to solve problems. And so whenever I was able to get the city of Niles and the city of Girard there, at the time it was called a community distress grant, and the planning that went into those things was incredible. We had to, there was one situation where I had to think outside the box we wanted to extend storm sewer project into an area that wasn't covered that wasn't eligible through this grant. So I thought, well, wow, if we can income survey them, we can combine the census tracts, and we can do the entire project and then a parks project. And I did that grant, and we got it. And that was really a high point because we ended up getting both the city of Niles and the city of Girard those grants. And I thought that was exciting, and I loved that type of thing. And then the other thing was whenever we finally had the breakthrough, and this was just me being on the volunteer council for the senior levy, when we finally got the commissioners to allow us to put the money out for bid and stop the transit board and from using that contractor that wasn't providing quality services and who was just hitched up to the county gravy train, or the federal government gravy train, and be able to bring in WRTA. Like, I felt like those two things were personal successes because I worked so hard behind the scenes in order to accomplish those things. So those are my proudest moments of the work that I've done. And one of them was working, and one of them was volunteering for the county.
Oh, I could see with the big smile on your face, those were two big high moments.
They were.
This one comes from Jessica. once you're in as commissioner, what do you do on the first day?
Hmm.
It's always someone's always got the what do you do on the first day? You know what I mean?
It's gonna sound. I just imagine. I'm already visualizing that. Okay. I want to meet. I want to meet I want to go to every department and meet with the employees and the staff and the directors and let them know that things are going to change, and they're going to change for the better. And I want to meet people and let them know that I will be there to help them to do their jobs better and to improve their situations, their work, and because they are public servants, and to let them know that they're not there to follow my agenda, because I have no agenda for myself, but to let them know that their new agenda is to provide the best services for the county and for the people. And to, I want to be able to meet the employees and the directors and let them know that our new agenda is to focus on customer service. And we are, it's a certain, I don't think a lot of people realize that when you're an elected official, and someone told me this this weekend at a gun show, he said, he said, I am hiring you. If I vote for you, you work for me. And the employees in the county are an extension of that. So to the extent I'll be the commissioner and they're like the executives of the county, everyone at the county needs to realize that they are working for the same guy who voted for me, and they need to be providing better services for them also. I want to improve the overall relationship with the government and the public. I can't wait to meet people.
Well, you got little under a month. Well, actually, you have a month today for election, November 3rd. So
and early voting starts this week.
Early voting starts in a couple days, I think.
Yes.
So I appreciate you coming on, Niki. It was a pleasure. I will give you 1 minute to say whatever you want in closing.
Oh, I have no idea.
So you have the floor for about a minute.
Okay, I don't know how many people tune in or watch your show or anything, but I just want to say I'd like the voters and people watching this to give me an opportunity to do what's right for the county. If I'm going against someone who's been in office for 37 years and I believe has fallen asleep at the wheel, and I'm very qualified, and I have a real plan to do things that are in our best interest. And I don't want you to look at party. I don't want you to look at what you've always done, or this person's been nice to me. I want you to look at me and my plan. Go on my website, look at my Facebook page, and find out more about what I stand for. And to just give me an opportunity to serve you. Just give me a chance, because what we've been having for the last 37 years really hasn't been working. It's reflected in our job loss and the morale of our staff and our population decline. So I believe at this point we don't have anything to lose, and that I can actually be an example of what real public service is, of what a real commissioner should be doing, and set that example and raise the bar. I feel like here in Trumbull County, people have gotten so used to lowering their expectations relative to what government service and what government is, that we're just happy with scraps. And I want to be able to raise our standards and to improve the lives and the situations for all of us here in Trumbull County. And I just ask you that if you like what I'm about, I'd like to ask you to join our team, because we still have some campaigning to do, and to tell your friends and your family about me, because I am the candidate for change.
Thank you, Niki. I appreciate if you want to stay on after this.
Okay.
Everyone, thank you, Niki. Always a pleasure. I wish you the best. Thank you for taking the time out of everyone's schedule. You're always welcome on this show, and we'll hope to hear back from you in the future. And maybe we'll talk about real estate, because right now it's hot. So thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Check out anthonyvspano.com for any updates, announcements, and upcoming guests. God bless, be safe, and have a great night, everyone.